Welcome to Sustainable Packaging with Corey Connors, presented by Atlantic Packaging. I'm your host, Corey Connors. In today's episode, I connected with longtime friend of the show, Ryan Fox from Bloomberg Intelligence. We talked about the corrugated market and even discussed his unique collection of corrugated BMCs. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, 3M and SpecRite. We couldn't do the show without them. Welcome back, Mr. Ryan Fox. I think this will be your, fourth or fifth time on our podcast. I'm so excited to have you on, man.
Thanks for having me, Corey. It's always great to see you, and it's always great to be with you here.
Well, let's get right into it. Tell us, for those of our audience who don't know you, tell us a little bit about your background and what got you into corrugated.
Yeah. So I got into corrugated by sheer accident back in 2010. I originally started my career, much like Adam Peake. I started my career in the ministry thing, and that didn't really turn out too well for me. It just didn't stick. It wasn't for me. Then I went into sales and got into fitness equipment sales, and the great financial crisis hit, and the company went bankrupt. I was at NC State to get an MBA in innovation management. And I graduated in 2010, but with no job. And I had a friend of a friend of a friend who knew somebody, and they needed a salesperson in a corrugated box plant. I had no idea that this job even existed. And I went and I interviewed. It seemed to go pretty well. They hired me on the spot. I started the next day and, hit the ground running. I had a pretty good success record for the first few years. I got recruited to go work for one of the bigger integrateds. I did that for a few years and then had a required opportunity to find new employment and then went into distribution.
That's a great way to say it. I love it.
And then in the pandemic, I was approached by a headhunter at Bloomberg that said, "Hey, you've got an MBA, you've got experience in the industry. Would you think about, doing industry reporting?" And I said, "That sounds incredible. Let's talk about it."
Right up your alley.
So here we go. It was April 1st of 2020 when I started doing this, and it was part-time to begin. And then by 2021, we moved into full-time.
Well, and it's obvious how passionate you are, and you've even started collecting things in regards to corrugated. Let's talk about, you've got probably the world's largest box maker certificate collection. For those of us in the industry, that's BMC.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. How did that start?
How did it start? Well, it started because I didn't always know about all of the box plants in the country. I just didn't know there were so many. And I got some industry data back in 2020, and I thought there's over 1,100 box plants in the country. And I thought, well, I should try to keep track of these folks. And part of it was I wanted to know who I could call and who I could connect with and see if I could expand my reach. And so that's kind of what motivated it, was just to see who was making boxes, who was shipping boxes into my region, and what I was able to get. And I mean, if you haven't got some new ones here, this is Rand Whitney from their Boylston, Mass. I did not have that one. And then this is another one here. This was one, I think this is a distributor called City Paper.
Okay.
Birmingham, Alabama. So I collect them, whether they're a distributor or a manufacturer. I just kind of collect them and see who's out there. I put them into a spreadsheet so I can log them, and I classify them by sheet plant or corrugator plant or distributor, something like that.
I was just going to ask, how do you keep them all straight? That's incredible.
That's how I do it. And then I just toss them in a box for right now. I put all the BMCs in a box, and maybe one day my wife will let me make a map of the U.S. with BMCs.
Oh, that'd be really cool.
Yeah,
I
right?
love that idea.
Yeah.
I've seen people do license plates. So yeah, that would be really neat.
Well, I do have the #BoxNerd license plate. So I also collect books about the corrugated industry, whether or not they're textbooks or books that people have written about different facets of the industry. I'm like, where's my? I don't see it close by, but I recently got one that was packaging engineering. Well, by Mountain Fort. He was the guy that did the whole McKee formulation.
Oh, interesting. So how many BMCs have you collected?
Hundreds, probably somewhere in the 500 range.
Wow.
And I got to tell you that some of them, some of them are old and so they're not current, but the old ones are fun because then I get to do this old box post. And so for those who don't know, on LinkedIn, I will occasionally go antiquing with my wife. We'll find an old box I do a little bit of research on the company who was making the product, as well as the company who made the box, and provide a
Right.
little bit of background on it. Hopefully, it will be feeder material for a book called This Old Box.
I love that idea. I think you should be an app or make a book for sure. That's a great idea. I would certainly be a customer.
All right. Well, you and my mom, we've at least got two,
I think I can find a few friends to buy some.
maybe.
Well, let's talk about the BMC. What is it for? What does it do? And why is it needed on a corrugated box? Because I've had people ask me, do I actually need to put a BMC on a box?
Well, I think nowadays you probably don't, but this actually has roots that go back over 100 years. Yeah. Most people don't know that corrugated packaging is only about 130 years old, and it started in the late 1890s. It was kind of an accident.
Hmm.
Originally in the mid 1800s, people were pressing paper and putting the corrugation in it to do the supports in your hat to keep your top hat up. And then somebody said, well, if we glue a flat sheet of corrugated to the outside of it, we could wrap it around bottles and lanterns and things like that to be protective. And then
Hmm.
somebody said, well, I wonder if we glued another layer on the other side, what could we do with it? And then the story
And
goes
here we are.
that Robert Gare had this accident in New York City, and they made a box, and away we went. So that was really around the turn of the 1900s, where it started to get some steam. There's a picture online recently. Weber Packaging in Philadelphia was one of the first companies in the US who worked with Sam Langston. That's an industry name there, to have the first corrugator, one of the first corrugators. And it was the first machine to kind of do that whole process in one swipe, where you put in
Incredible.
paper on one side and it out popped a corrugated sheet on the other end. So that was in the early 1900s. And in 1914 courts, there was again, a lot of people don't know this. There was a decision called the Pridham decision. And ultimately, what was happening during those early days, when you think about shipping, if you were going to put your product in something, what was it going to travel in? And it wasn't a
A wood
corrugated
crate.
box.
Right.
It was probably a crate or a barrel.
Hey, friends, we are going to take a quick break to thank our sponsors. Please be sure to support them. Are you shipping with recycled corrugated? Think outside the box with 3M tape. 3M packaging tape can help you overcome your recycled corrugated challenges with confidence, making sure your boxes are sealed securely the first time, reducing downtime, and providing consistent performance. With 3M as your partner, you can maintain productivity, achieve cost savings, and turn packaging problems into sealing success. When you use recycled corrugated shipping boxes, think 3M packaging tape. Sustainability starts long before a product hits a shelf. It starts with the spec. That's why brands choose SpecRite, the leader in intelligent specification data management and modern product lifecycle management. SpecRite turns siloed packaging and product data into connected, reliable intelligence so AI can identify waste, optimize materials, streamline supplier collaboration, and accelerate sustainable product design. If you're trying to reduce packaging complexity or meet evolving regulations, it's time for a spec-first approach. SpecRite, the intelligent foundation for every product. Discover more at specrite.com. In packaging, it's still, I know a guy. But what happens when you don't? Or when you need something beyond your network? Forest is built for that. A platform that connects packaging knowledge with AI intelligence, giving you access to verified suppliers, real capabilities, and actionable data in one place. Take action at speed. Execute with intelligence. That's Forest.
We have nomenclature today. Oh, well, you're really scraping the bottom of the barrel there now, aren't you?
Right?
Well, that's where all the crumbs were. That's where all the mouse droppings were, whatever. It's the stuff you didn't want. Well,
Yikes.
it was expensive and it was heavy. And so when the corrugated boxes came around, some of these companies had an option, and they wanted to do that. They wanted to exercise that option to ship it with a corrugated box rather than a crate. Well, the railroads didn't like that. They wanted to sell you the crates to use because they ensure the passage of the materials. And ultimately what they were doing was they were price gouging. They said, well, we'll ship your box, but we're going to charge you an arm and a leg to do it. And so people sued the rails, and the courts ruled in their favor in 1914. And that was really where we saw a lot of pickup in activity in the corrugated box industry. And so one of the things that came out of that was called Rule 41, and it was a way for the rails to have some certainty about what the box was.
Oh, I see.
Right. And
Set
so the
some standards.
producers had to stamp the box with what it was made of. And there were some rules that they came up with about the size and how much weight it could bear and all of that. So, and this is where our early forms of packaging come out. Like we talk about 200-pound Mullen or a Mullen grade board versus now we use ECTs. ECTs were not even a thing back in the early 1900s. It was all Mullen. And so really that was kind of the big springboard for having a box maker's certificate was it was to fall in line with Rule 41. Around the 1960s, the National Motor Freight Carriers enacted Item 222, which is a similar ruling that you had to have some kind of a specification on the box because they didn't want things to collapse during shipment. And so that was really where in the 1960s things, if you weren't putting a BMC in there, they really picked up then.
That's awesome. I didn't know that about the trains. That's really cool history. I think it's
Well,
important that we know that stuff. Yeah.
the other thing that's kind of interesting is that this is where the 42-pound craft liner board index comes from. Most people don't even know this. 42-pound craft liner board is the basis for 200-pound Mullen. 200-pound Mullen requires that you have 84 pounds of liner facings. And back in the day, it used a 26-pound semi-chemical medium. And in the 1960s, when people were thinking about how should they price a box or when the buyers were trying to should cost model a box, they could
Mhm.
look at the open market pricing for 42-pound craft liner board and 26-pound semi-chemical medium, and they could then create their own should cost model. Like, oh, well, if the paper's this much, then I'm not going to pay more than this for the box.
Oh, I
And
see.
that's kind of how those two things came about. They were the commodity grade. The
Hmm.
problem is today that is not the commodity grade. The commodity grade is lighter than that. And that was a result of the shift in the industry where in 1990 we adopted ECT as an alternative to Mullen, where ECT doesn't require a certain number of pounds per thousand square feet for the facings. It's really can the box pass an edge crush test of
Mhm.
whatever size. So 32 ECT, for instance, is one of the
Pretty standard. Right,
commodity
right.
grade.
I would think that's probably most of what's made, like sea flute or, yeah, 32.
According to Fiberbox data, 90% of the boxes made in the US are single wall. And I would be willing to bet that a very high portion, maybe 60%, 50 to 60% maybe, I don't know, probably in that 32 or less.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it does the job for most things.
It
And
certainly does.
because there's lifting limitations and, you don't want the box to weigh 100 pounds when you're done with it, when you're packing it out for the consumer, right?
Correct.
So we want to keep that number under 50 pounds and really make it easy and convenient. Also has to fit on a pallet and fit through a door when you're carrying it.
Well, and then there are structural qualities to many of the products that we use. So, for
Right.
instance, if you're a brewery and you have bottles inside the bottles create some of the structure. You don't need the box; you just need a wrapper. If
Yeah.
you're a cereal company and you're putting cereal boxes in the box, all of those boxes add structure. You don't necessarily
Right.
need. But one of the things that we can do, coming back to Mountain Fort and the McKee formulation, there's a lot of science that goes into that.
Hmm.
And so you can actually now look at the strength properties of the paper itself and predict ECT with a very high level of certainty. And so once you know the ECT that's predicted, then you can put in the length, width, depth of the box, the caliper, you put in your safety requirements. Is it going to be stacked in a column or offset? Is it going to, overhang on a pallet? How long it will be stacked if you're stacking it, right? If you're not going to do partial
Right.
shipment. But you can actually predict box compression, all of this in theory before the box is even done.
Incredible.
And then again with science, once you've done it, you can see how well did we predict this, right?
Yeah.
And
Were we,
so
were we right? Yeah.
were we right? And then if we weren't right, where did we go wrong? And there
Right.
are a lot of great tests to help you understand how well you did at making a box. There's a little product called the Chalmers DST, Dynamic Stiffness Tester, and it is a fantastic device to really show how well you can both corrugate the sheet and then also convert that sheet into a box and maintain strength through the entire process.
It's an amazing process. And a lot of people listening, I haven't talked about this very much, but one of my first jobs was working on the corrugator and also where I got my nickname, Corrugated. And as you know, I've told that joke a million times, but it's true. And it's such a cool process to watch the paper feed through and the double backer and how the starch gets applied to the middle sheet. And it's incredible to watch. And then all of a sudden out the end comes finished sheets that
That's
are already
exactly right.
scored, ready to go onto the finishing equipment, which is amazing for most people to watch. Like, wow, this here we go.
And
We're almost there.
it is to me, I'm with you. I never tire of seeing a corrugator. I now look at them and I go, wow.
Hmm.
Because now you've got some corrugators that are up to 132 inches wide and they're running at speeds like the run speeds are over 1,300 lineal feet per minute. And so
That's
you just see
incredible.
this massive sheet of paper running and what paper companies are able to do these days, it's truly incredible.
I really enjoyed that job working at Weyerhaeuser making boxes and learning about the process. I think is what got me through the beginning of my career because I was so young and just not knowledgeable about packaging other than all I knew was corrugated for sure. So,
Yeah.
but I think that helped me get through a lot of my first meetings and relationships.
Was there, when you think back on your time doing that, was there a job role or something that you saw that was kind of most insightful that helped you be more successful when you turned into sales?
Well, yeah, I really enjoyed watching and learning from the people they were called die mounters, and they would make the flexographic print plates, and then they would mount them onto the sheet that would get mounted onto the roll. And that process is so scientific and incredible. To print a BMC, you have to have a die, a print plate is what we call it.
Yeah.
It's not a print plate. It's really a flexible, rubber stamp. Really, for those listening who haven't seen the process, but it's uh, it's incredible how the chemically etched away the parts that don't get printed, and then they have these big areas of print, and you need one for each color. And I was impressed with how they made those and
Hmm.
how they tested them, and then how they also made the cutting dies. I thought the cutting dies were like beautiful and a piece of like artwork. And now I know when people say $5,000 for a cutting die, yeah. And here's why.
Right.
They weigh 100 pounds, and they take 20 hours to make, and there's an incredible amount of material there,
Yeah.
and they're just expensive. They're valuable,
Yeah.
and they can be used for years.
That's exactly right. I mean, sometimes millions of impressions they're good for. They're highly engineered, and that's just if you're thinking about what I would say is a kind of a common rotary die. If you think about like
Right.
if you've got an advanced flatbed die cutter and
Mhm.
you've got strippers and blankers that go along with it, so that you have this really precise and clean. It just creates so much efficiency down through the production thing. Yeah, it's going to cost money, but it's going to get you so much more in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. Running pizza boxes was always one of my favorite jobs. It was hard work, but we would watch them cut through the die press, and it was a platen die flat. And then they would come out, and you'd have to break the bundles manually back when I did it. Now they have machines that do that. And then you run it through a shrink tunnel if the customer wants them shrink wrapped, and then you stack them on a pallet. But it was really fun to we would run those for days and just change out the artwork. Okay, we're running 12-inch pizza boxes, this today.
That's right.
And we've got 5 print plates, so we're gonna run. And it was just very efficient. So that because setting up the tooling takes a lot of time.
It does. And if any box buyers have never been to their box plant, like that is
Right.
something that needs to happen. That gives you a completely different frame of reference to see the time it takes to set the machines up, to see the level of precision that some of the machines can get, the speed at which they go. Like these are I mean, these are not inexpensive machines and
No.
they do an incredible.
And the operator of the machine, their knowledge is so valuable. I think that's where you earn a lot of your respect in the industry is those true partnerships and saying, hey, I want this crew working on it and making sure that it runs perfectly. Because a lot of the print's very difficult, a lot of die cutting's very intricate. Yeah, this is great to
In
talk about.
in flexographic printing, I mean, that guy that's running the press needs to know how to manipulate the pH and the viscosity of the ink so that it prints
Mhm.
properly. You know, he has to know how fast he can run the thing. He has to know how hard to make the impression. This is a I don't want to I don't want to undervalue it. It's at least a semi-skilled trade, if not a skilled trade, right?
Oh,
This
very
is not,
skilled. Yeah.
yeah, this is not, this is, oh, well, I can go do that without any training. No, this is like, you're going to have to spend a few months mentoring under somebody.
Yeah, years. I know people that worked in that plant for 20 years and more because once you learn this specific machine, you become so valuable to the process and then you can train other people.
That's right.
So, yeah, that's
That's
a
right.
really important topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, anybody listening, if you're in the packaging industry, make sure you visit a corrugated plant, see a corrugator run. It's so valuable to your career and your education. Well, let's talk a little bit about kind of the broad spectrum of corrugated as an industry. Any highlights from 2025? Anything from this year yet that you're kind of seeing?
Yeah. Well,
Trends you can
so
tell us
so
about?
I'm going to say the thing that has gotten most people to raise their eyebrows. In
Yep.
2025, we can calculate how many boxes are produced. We do that by measuring square footage. There are two ways to measure that. One is in tons, the other is in square footage. And from a square footage standpoint, we basically made the same number of boxes in 2025 that we did in 1994.
Whoa.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna say that. You're like, "Wait, what? That can't be right." But it's right, and people say, "How can that possibly be?" And the answer is, for the last 30 years, we've been importing more and more goods from other countries, and all of those things, well, the majority of those things come to us prepackaged.
Hmm.
So when we talk about, making America great again and reshoring manufacturing, we really need to kind of pump the brakes and kind of reset our expectations. Currently, the National Association of Manufacturers has over 400,000 open manufacturing jobs.
Wow.
Right.
Incredible.
Okay, that's great. We want to bring more back, but we still have a lot of openings. So how do we
We
do
need
that?
workers to do the
We need
jobs,
we
right?
need workers, right? We just wrote in our last box report that even box plants need workers, right? We
Mhm.
need more people to be able to show up and to put in a good effort. I mean, these are pretty good paying jobs for people who may not have a deep education. I was in a box plant earlier this week. They start at $22 an hour. That's where they start. And a good press worker could make up as much as $35 an hour in that particular plant. And that's before any bonuses and incentives, right? So
That's
that's
great.
actually I mean, that's going to get that person. I mean, $35 an hour is roughly $70,000 a year. That's not a bad gig. And in a box plant, I know it's not sexy, but
And it's hard work. I'd come home with
it's
lots of
not
paper
easy
cuts
work,
and
right?
very
Yeah,
tired and sore, but yeah,
yeah.
it's worth it.
It is worth it. You'll need to make sure you have a good pair of ears, hearing protection, and
Yeah.
some good steel-toed boots or something. You want to have all your safety precautions in there, but it's a good. Yes,
I remember we talked about safety so much, it became so annoying. Looking back, I was very appreciative of how much that organization cared about our safety. And if you ever needed safety gloves or whatever, any kind of equipment, yes, here. They couldn't get it to you fast enough. And they really invested in that education and training. And I appreciate that now as an older person in the industry, looking back as my 18-year-old self, thinking, okay, at least they took care of me and
yeah.
made sure I was wearing my earplugs and all the stuff.
I will say the majority of people that I speak to in this industry take safety like that is paramount, right?
Yeah,
They provide
has to
the
be.
hearing protection. They provide the glasses. They provide the training. They make sure that everybody's equipped to do what they need to do. They track all of this stuff. They don't want lost time accidents. They will do
Yep.
everything in their power to keep everybody safe. Safety
Yeah.
is the thing.
No, I totally agree. And a lot of the automation equipment that's been added is certainly helping with that. I did want to, before we get too far down the show, I wanted to see what your thoughts are on moving forward. Do you see, I know you don't have a crystal ball,
Sure.
you've ordered one, but it's not there yet. Do you see a growth trend or do you see some maybe more reduction in production here in the US.
Well, one of the reasons why we've seen the like the volume that we've seen in the last year, we kind of have to rewind the tape just a little bit.
Hmm.
The pandemic wasn't that long ago, and that's when we saw a huge spike.
It was
Demand
massive.
went through the roof. So why did demand spike? Well, Americans were locked down. A lot of the world was locked down. And when we got locked down, we couldn't go to Taylor Swift concerts.
Right.
You couldn't go do a lot of the things you normally did. And so we saw an expansion in real personal disposable income, and that was supplemented by some government stimulus. Well, you can't go spend it anywhere else. So what did we do? A lot of people renovated their houses. They bought new furniture. They bought new grills. They bought new
Hmm.
bikes. They bought and
Online,
they bought and they
which
bought and they bought.
needs
Yeah, a
boxes.
lot of
Yeah.
this was online. And so on the one hand, we may have pulled forward some of the spending that we were gonna do in future years because we had nothing else to do with it. On the
Great point.
other hand, it was that was how we kept the economy going, right? And we saw an explosion with Uber Eats and DoorDash and things like that. And what we ended up seeing was by 2022, the world was coming back into some semblance of order and the demand started to recede. So
Mhm.
demand went down. And not only did demand go down, but that real personal disposable income, it started going down too. And so
Right.
now when you were making decisions about what you were going to do with your money, hey, I've already got all of these things. What I want to do is go see Taylor Swift. What I want to do is go to Disney World.
Right.
What I want to do is go to Italy, right? And so the
Yeah.
spending changed. It
The
became
second you could go outside. Yeah.
right.
Let's go.
The second it became different, it was okay, let's go do the experience. Let's go
Right.
do the service. And so that spending changed things tremendously. The other thing that really changed things is the addition of things like GLP-1 drugs, the Wegovy's and Manjaros and Roe and all these. This is something that we've seen in the data. This is something that we look at when we see consumer goods companies. Their volume has been going down because Americans are making different decisions these days, right? So
Right.
that's another big kind of headwind for the industry. Then you look at e-commerce now from where we were 5 or 6 years ago. And now Amazon, the big e-commerce giant, is sending a lot of things in paper mailers.
Right.
And they're doing it for several reasons, right? The first, in my opinion, is that they get a better cube through their
Right.
supply chain, right? It's a smaller package. They can handle it differently. The second thing is it's less money. And then lastly, it aligns with some of their climate goals, right? They want to create less waste.
Yeah.
So this is a perfect solution for them. It accomplishes everything they're trying to do. But all of these things kind of converge between the lowering of the real personal disposable income, the shifting of where they're spending their money. And now they're spending the money on GLP-1 drugs, so they're not going to go buy snacks. And oh, by the way,
Right.
when they are spending things online, some of these companies are shipping it in paper bags. So all these things are contributing to this decline. And so the question we really have to ask ourselves is if we look in the crystal ball is what's going to happen to real personal disposable income in the future? Is it going to get bigger or smaller? And why? And so this
Mm.
year, as we think about this year, right now we're seeing the conflict in Iran. We're seeing gas prices shoot up, seeing freight prices shoot up. We're seeing a lot of inflation across a variety of commodities. And there are going to be ripple effects that are going to last for at least another 12 to 18 months.
Yeah.
So,
Well said.
yeah, so it's not a great outlook for volume. It's not a bad outlook either. Just as we think it's going to come down again, right? We
Yeah.
think that from a alignment of spending to boxes, it's going to kind of converge and say, yeah, we're going to be.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. And we'll see how it goes, and we'll see how we can become more efficient at making boxes and keep that trend moving forward.
We will definitely see that is for sure.
Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate you being on, Mr. Fox, and always love our chats. Thank you.
Yes, same.